Yo, what's going on today, guys? It's your boy Zazo, and I'm back again for another video. So today, in this video, we're going to be talking about 10 years plus of coding advice that's going to save you a bunch of time, money, and effort. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so these are the things that I wish someone would have told me, or things that I would have learned earlier on in my career that would have saved me a ton of time. So the first thing is imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome, for those you who don't know, you may have already experienced this and never been able to put a word to it, but it's basically where you think that you can't do something or you think you're not ready for a position. This happened a lot, and this actually still happens, and I don't think it ever goes away. But when I was getting my first entry-level software engineering job, I didn't think I could do the job. I didn't think, I didn't think I was capable. I didn't have the credentials, which was another thing. I didn't have a degree, so it made me even more insecure about my skills and abilities. But in the end, if you just put your head down and basically commit yourself to learning whatever it is, then you'll be perfectly fine. It's also kind of common in the tech industry because it's always changing and it's never really stagnant. So you're always gonna have that new thing that you have to learn, that new concept, that new framework, that new piece of your code that you'll always have to learn. There's things that you just won't be familiar with, which is perfectly fine. But as long as you know how to get through it, stay disciplined through it, you'll be perfectly fine. All right, so another thing is a misconception that I had, which I mentioned in a previous video, is being a very introverted workspace. However, there are a lot of introverted people that you will work with while coding and while being in software development. However, in order for you to kind of grow, being introverted is not going to help you at all, because you'll need to at some point talk to business partners about certain things that you're building, especially if you want to get up to those higher levels of principal engineer, staff engineer, lead engineer, senior software engineer. So as you move up the chain, the less and less you'll probably be in the day-to-day coding. Not saying you won't do coding, but there's going to be bigger ideas and bigger things that you'll be focusing on primarily, rather than just in the nitty-gritty coding day in and day out. All right, so this one is huge for me, and it is focusing on learning concepts and not learning programming syntax or worried about learning a specific language. So when I was coming up, there was a whole lot of rah-rah around web development at the time and web apps. So I wanted to commit myself to being a web developer, so I just boxed myself in, and that's all I really, not really all I did. There were so many different frameworks, and I was always trying to find the best framework or the best programming language for that. Just so in my mind, I thought I was saving time. If I learned the best, then I'm already ahead of the game. So when things change, I'll already be ahead. That's not true at all. So what I would say is pick a programming language that is in the area that you want to go into. If it's something like web development, learn something like JavaScript and learn it very, very well. Learn how it interacts with the DOM. If you don't know what a DOM is, it's document object model. And learn how it moves certain things, learn how the language works on the inside and outside. The reason why I say that is because as you learn and focus on those concepts, it will become easier to go ahead and transfer those over to another language if you so happen you need another language, which you will, or you just want to change completely. So that's another thing that I would definitely focus on. So another thing is, don't get stuck in tutorial hell. All right, what do I mean by this is where, if you haven't heard of tutorial hell, is essentially where you continue to do tutorial after tutorial to build different things. Now, the reason why this is bad, if you continue to do it, if you're a beginner or new, it's not as bad. You'll need to watch a video at some point to really comprehend, especially if you're a visual learner like myself. However, getting stuck in this loop is something that I did for many years. And don't get stuck in tutorial hell. Watch, 1 to 2 videos on whatever you're trying to learn or trying to grasp. And then after that, try your best to use Google documentation, GitHub, Stack Overflow, those types of things. Even Chat GPT, but make sure that when you're going through these things, you're not just copy and pasting code. You're actually understanding and comprehending what it's doing. And even if you use Chat GPT, go and play around with what you've made. All right, so this kind of leads into the next one. So this is going to be kind of short. Project-based learning. Find pain points in your own life that you would like to automate, that you would like to make easier, and basically go through the full project with little to no tutorials, I would say, documentation, and try to go through those things. Definitely find something in your own life, and if you can't, there's a bunch of different resources online that will give you kind of like these practice projects. You can do something just off the top of my head, like an expense calculator. That's something that expense calculator, tracker, whatever you want to call it. That's a cool little thing to do. What I did is I did something very simple as a beginning project is, the downloads folder on your computer. I have a script that essentially I have a Stream Deck, so I just press a button and it deletes all of those files when I hit the button. You can also schedule it on your task scheduler and have it run on a certain cadence, a weekly cadence, monthly cadence, whatever that is. Do something simple like that and then build off of it. After that, after you make a script, turn it into a user interface and then expand from there, or make it a web app, or do other things, make it in many different forms. This will get you very familiar with different forms of actually creating the same functionality, which will be beneficial for you in the long run. All right, so the next one is create a roadmap of what you want to do and how to get there. So back when I was starting, I just wanted to learn programming or coding, right? I didn't understand the depth and how much that entailed, right? Nowadays we have a lot more resources, a lot of different things that will help us get to a certain point. So what I would say is do a little bit of Googling and research on the front end, understand what you like, what you don't like, set a roadmap for yourself. For example, when I was starting web development at that time, I had my 3 that I needed to learn, or start with, I should say. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? And don't feel like you need to perfect each one to get to the next one. Because what I realized is being very new and not having anybody to kind of guide me is I spent a lot of time learning HTML when that's not the most important part of what I need to learn. It's a markup language, so it's tag based, so you just need to know what tags do what. But I was focused on learning every single tag that was there, which really isn't necessary, and it really doesn't do you any good, because at this point there's so many other different things that can basically whip things up like that. I was trying to learn the document type head, how this goes and in the order it goes. You don't need to worry about all of that. Learn how to do it, learn the key core concepts about HTML, CSS. Once again, same thing. It's not going to do you too good in the long run unless you actually want to go into something like web design or something that is very user interface based and it goes with colors and things like that. Then yeah, you might want to focus a little bit more on the CSS part or something in that realm if that's something that you enjoy. But for me, that wasn't the case. What I should have been focusing more is in JavaScript, because that's what kind of fed my passion and what I wanted to do with websites. So I should have spent more time there rather than focusing so much on HTML and CSS and trying to perfect everything there. All right, so this one is going to be a little bit of a weird one, but it's definitely necessary. You need to kind of be doing self-reflection as you go through your journey and understand what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at and what you're not good at. People. Let's be honest with ourselves. This is the biggest thing, but it's also the hardest thing, right? Like I said, I was focusing on HTML and CSS, and I was so worried about making a great looking website before I made it functional. In reality, I suck as far as making visual interfaces and making them look really good. There's things out there that can help you with that and make that a lot easier, but don't try to force yourself into being that person if you're not. I'm not that person that's very visual, artsy, that type of thing, but yet I focus so much time on CSS and trying to perfect it and trying to make my website look so good in the beginning that it hindered me going forward, because the stuff that I actually wanted to do, I was late to and also spent less time on it because I was always focusing on I have to get the CSS right before I can make the functionality work. Focus on the thing that you really want to know and then reverse engineer everything else. If there's a template you can use for that CSS, do that just to get your thing functioning, and then you can customize and make little changes here or there. That's perfectly fine. So that's another thing. We need to be self-reflecting, understand what you're good at, what you're not good at, and if it's something that's necessary for your area, either get better or realize that, hey, this may not be for me. Let me go ahead and move to another specialty or something like that. All right, so another thing is senior developers or any high-level developers, stated in the beginning of the video, they focus on more on architecture and how the application or program will work as a whole, not a hold. But when you get into these big code bases and you work for these companies, there is a lot of different moving parts in how this system or these systems work together. Senior developers or high level developers, staff developers, they focus on those things and how to architect better, more efficient ways of doing things. So once you kind of get the coding aspect to a degree, I'm not saying there's no such thing as mastering coding as far as like you just know what to do in every scenario. There's going to be times where you're handed something and you don't know what to do. The important part or the key part is that you know how to figure it out, right? If you're confident in yourself that you can figure things out, then you don't need to focus about the really detailed stuff. Just worry about, figuring it out when you get it, but really kind of hone in on the architecture, things, how things flow, how to make things more efficient. Because what I will tell you is the entry level, programmer, the guy fresh out of high school, college, he's gonna know or she's gonna know how to code just like you. Maybe not at the same degree, right? They're gonna know how to write some code. Everybody, software development, mostly everybody, knows how to write some code. So you gotta realize as you advance, you have to have other skills that are going to put you above the rest as far as your knowledge, your expertise. And that comes with writing clean, reusable code, making it easier for other people, being a resource, and also focusing on, like I said, those architecture flows, the bigger picture, looking at how to make things more efficient, more seamless across different platforms and systems, company, or even externally. All right, so another thing is focus on your data structures and algorithms, I would say. Now, I'm not gonna say go ahead and go crazy with this. You do need to know your data structures in whatever language you are learning, but learn them to a decent degree. Once again, it's like the whole CSS thing that I referred to earlier. You need to know how they work, and I would say this is the most important, but this is one of the important things that you really should hone in on, unlike the CSS, right? Learn how to really use data structures, how they work, what's a queue, what's a linked list, what are some other ones, arrays, things like that. Learn how they work, how to work with them, how to manipulate them. This is going to be very useful in pretty much any program or system that you're working in, because you're going to need to store more items. You're going to need to know how these things different work, what are the benefits of using a linked list as opposed to something else, and all these things kind of go into it. Also, algorithms, right? Algorithm is it's scary when you hear about it, like an algorithm, but it's really just like a series of steps or how a certain algorithm, works as far as things like bubble sort, binary search, those types of things. Learn how they work, learn the pros and cons of each. So that way, when you're working in your day-to-day, which one may be beneficial and try them out. That's the only way you're gonna know which one works better, which one's more efficient for this situation. things like that. So the next one is get a GitHub account. Make a GitHub account and start showcasing your work. I did not do this at the beginning, and it didn't really bite me, but I didn't do that at the beginning, and all the stuff was hosted on my computer, and I can only show different things on my computer, so I can only have employers access my projects if I brought my computer with me, and that's only assuming I had an interview, right? I would recommend getting a GitHub account, putting your projects on there. If you do not finish a project, do not delete it. Keep it there. It can be unfinished, but it shows a lot about what you can do, and you can always explain in the interview, I haven't finished this one yet because such and such. You can always talk about it. The key thing is to have something that people can look at. Put it on your resume. Put your GitHub on your resume so that way employers can look and they can kind of see, oh, okay, you're already working. You're already doing the job. Most of the time, if you were going to ask me who to hire, somebody who I think can do the job or someone who is already doing the job or already shows the skills of being able to do the job, I'm gonna go with that person 99% of the time, right? So if you can show that you can do the job, or even knowing what that company kind of specializes in and doing something similar or specific to that company, is really going to put you, a step above the rest, not just regular, school projects, that type of thing, something that everybody had to do, right? That's another thing that kind of feeds into a lot of things. Making distinct projects that solve your distinct problems are a lot better than saying, hey, I had to make a website in college, here it is, right? Or saying, I found that there was a problem in my life, I wanted to solve it with code. This is how I did it. This is why I went this way. This is why I went that way. And this is how I designed it. And this is what I came up with as far as a working product. It also opens conversation for, sometimes they'll actually give you feedback. Hey, have you ever thought about doing this, this, and this, and this? And you might, even if you don't get that job, you may get some insightful stuff that you could take away from that interview and use it and apply it. And who knows, you make those changes, right? You apply for the same company and be able to maybe impress that same hiring manager that gave you those tips or whatever, There's a whole lot of opportunity out. So do that, get you a GitHub account, showcase your work. Do not delete projects, half projects, incomplete projects. Just keep them up there, showcase your work. All right, and the last one, but definitely not the least one, is join a community. Nowadays, there's a whole bunch of different platforms and programs. Discord GitHub's kind of a community. There's a bunch of different communities. I would say join one. This is one that I wish I did, because you're going to get people that are at different levels, and you can essentially play a part in all those different levels in being a resource, or getting information from somebody who's more staff engineer, higher level engineer. So you can really hone in and grab different pieces of the puzzle of your coding journey, and you'll be able to kind of bounce ideas off of people that are at your same level, below your same level. It helps you on all different fronts, because if you think about it, if you are going to be explaining something to a new beginner, you have to understand it on a deep concept, which is going to force you to understand it that way in order to explain it. Or you get help from a mentor or somebody that's at a higher level than you, right? Or somebody at your same level, right? You guys can bounce ideas. What if I try this? What if I try that? And you guys go and do the work and say, hey, this worked, this didn't work. Join a community. I did not join a community, and I realized this can exponentially help your growth by 10x, 20x, just because you have other heads to kind of bounce ideas off of. All right, this is gonna be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want me to go through any of these topics or any of the ones in my other videos, go ahead and like the video, comment what topics you want to see, or different programming concepts you want to see, and I'll try to make a video for that. But until then, stay safe, love, peace, and chicken grease. I'll see you on the next one. I'm out.